Whenever you feel anxious, depressed, or if you're failing, people tell you the same thing. Work on your mind. Fix your mind, calm your mind, change your mind, control your mind, master your mind. At first, that advice sounds reasonable, but I started to ask myself, if the mind is the problem, how can I use the same mind to fix itself? That question changes everything, because if the advice is wrong, then years of effort could be misdirected. That's a serious stake. Over the last few years, I've noticed something interesting. People, especially in the West, are becoming deeply interested in Eastern philosophies. Yoga studios are everywhere. Meditation apps are mainstream. Words like mindfulness, awareness, non-duality, things that once sounded obscure, are now part of everyday language. And this isn't just cultural curiosity. Something deeper is happening. People are searching, because what they've been told about the mind isn't fully working anymore. Now, to be clear, Western philosophy and psychology have done incredible work. Thinkers like Descartes, Freud, Jung, each tried to explain the mind in their own way. Yet despite all this, people still feel stuck. They understand their patterns, but the suffering continues. They know why they feel a certain way, but that knowledge doesn't free them. At some point, many people quietly begin to feel something is missing here. That doubt is important because it creates a crack. This is where I came across Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta is one of the classical philosophies of the East. In its traditional framework, it explains that we exist as three layers: the gross body, meaning the physical body; the subtle body, which includes the mind, intellect, and ego; and the causal body, which is the deep, unmanifested self. But what surprised me was, it doesn't begin by telling you how to improve your mind. It doesn't offer techniques to control thoughts. Instead, it turns the attention in a different direction, toward a more fundamental question: who is the one experiencing the mind? That single shift changes everything. And for many people, that's why Advaita feels more convincing. Because it doesn't treat symptoms, it questions assumptions. Let me be very clear about the stakes here. If you misunderstand the mind, you will keep trying to fix something that doesn't need fixing. You'll keep fighting thoughts. You'll keep managing emotions. You'll keep blaming yourself for mental states you never chose. But if you understand the mind correctly, your entire relationship with suffering changes. That's why I took time to simplify Advaita's view for you, and I personally sorted it into 5 points that helped me understand the mind more clearly. Out of these 5, I personally connected most with the 4th point, where I use a simple animation to clearly show the real difference between you and your mind. By the end of this video, I promise you'll be able to see the mind clearly without getting trapped by it and begin relating to it in a completely different way. Let's look at them one by one. 1. The mind is an object. The first thing that became clear to me is, in Advaita Vedanta, the mind is treated as an object. Now, what do I mean by an object? An object is simply something you can observe. You see a stone, that's an object. You see a tree, that's an object. And in the same way, you can observe your own thoughts. You can notice emotions rising and falling. You can watch mental images appear and disappear, which means the mind, too, is an object. Anything you can observe cannot be you. Thoughts are objects. Emotions are objects. Mental states are objects. Yet many of us unknowingly identify with them. We say, I am my thoughts. But from Advaita's perspective, thoughts are just another thing that appears, like a sound or a sensation. The mind is an object. You are the one observing it, which means you are not the mind. And that realization quietly changes the entire direction of the inquiry. Thoughts can arise, emotions can move through you, mental states can change, but you remain the one who is aware of them. And that single shift from being inside the mind to seeing the mind is where real freedom begins. 2. Suffering comes from identification. The second insight for me was even more important. Advaita doesn't say that thoughts themselves cause suffering. Thoughts come and go all the time. What it points to is subtler. Identification is what creates suffering. Focus on this illustration for better understanding. You, represented by a gray circle, are pure and unaffected. A thought, represented in blue, appears in the mind. I'm anxious. On its own, that's just a thought. It's a mental event, like a sound passing by. But the moment we take that thought personally, the moment we say, I am anxious, something changes. You are no longer pure gray, and it's no longer just a thought. It has become who you think you are. You believe you are the thought. You have identified yourself with the thought. That's when suffering begins. The pain isn't really in the thought itself. The pain is in claiming ownership of it. We don't just notice the emotion, we become the emotion. And once that happens, the mind starts defending it, explaining it, and repeating it. If this is true, then suffering is not a personal failure. It's not because you're weak. It's not because you're doing something wrong. It's a misunderstanding about what you are and what the mind is. And that realization alone can quietly change how you see yourself and how seriously you take every thought that passes through you. 3. The ego is a function. The third point really challenges how we usually think about the ego. When most people hear the word ego, they think of arrogance, pride, or thinking you're better than others. But that's not what Advaita is talking about. Here, ego simply means the I maker. It's a mental function that keeps saying, I think, I act, I suffer. It's the part of the mind that keeps claiming everything as mine. When a thought pops up, it quickly says, this is my thought. When you take an action, it says, I did that. When pain or discomfort shows up, it says, this is happening to me. It's like a little narrator inside you, constantly pointing at everything and saying, me, me, me. But the ego is not a solid thing sitting inside you. It's not an entity. It's a habit of identifying with whatever is happening. Once you see this clearly, something changes. You stop trying to fight the ego because there's nothing solid to fight. Instead, you begin to see through it. And that shift matters, because fighting the ego only creates more tension. But seeing it for what it is, a simple mental function, naturally loosens its grip. Not through force, but through understanding. 4. The mind borrows consciousness. The fourth point is subtle, but also one of the most important ideas in Advaita. At first glance, the mind feels conscious. It thinks, reacts, feels alive. So it's natural to assume the mind is conscious. But Advaita makes a careful distinction. The mind doesn't actually have consciousness of its own. It borrows consciousness. Think of it like this. A movie screen appears bright and full of images. Characters move, emotions play out, stories unfold. But the screen itself isn't doing anything. It's just allowing the images to appear. In the same way, awareness illuminates the mind. Thoughts appear in that awareness. The mind looks conscious only because awareness is present. Thoughts don't create awareness. Awareness is already there, and thoughts appear within it. If that's true, then awareness doesn't come and go with mental states. The mind can be busy or quiet, clear or confused, calm or anxious. But awareness remains unchanged. Once you really see that, you stop tying your sense of existence to what the mind is doing. This is a profound shift, because it means your basic sense of being isn't dependent on having the right thoughts, the right mood, or the right mental state. And that quietly changes how seriously you take the mind. 5. Freedom is not fixing the mind. The fifth point brings everything together. By now, one thing should be clear. Advaita Vedanta is not trying to fix the mind. It's not trying to make your thoughts permanently positive. And it's not trying to give you a perfect personality. That's not its promise. What it offers is something deeper, freedom from mistaken identity. The real problem was never that the mind was too noisy, too emotional, or too unstable. The problem was believing that the mind was you. From this perspective, you don't need a calm mind to be free. You don't need the right thoughts. You don't need a special mental state. You need clarity. Clarity about what the mind is and clarity about what you are not. And this understanding quietly changes how you relate to everything. It removes excuses. You can no longer say, I'll be free once my mind is fixed. But it also removes blame. You stop seeing yourself as broken or flawed for having certain thoughts. Nothing has to be eliminated. Nothing has to be forced. There's just something to be clearly seen. And once that is seen, the struggle with the mind naturally begins to fall away. Quick summary. Let's quickly bring everything together. These are the 5 insights from Advaita Vedanta. 1. The mind is an object you can observe. 2. Suffering comes not from thoughts, but from identifying with them. 3. The ego is not a thing, but a function that claims ownership. 4. The mind is not conscious by itself. It borrows awareness. 5. Freedom is not about fixing the mind, but about seeing clearly. These 5 points changed how I relate to my own mind. And maybe this is why so many people today, especially in the West, are drawn toward Advaita Vedanta's understanding of the mind. Not because it's exotic, not because it's ancient, but because it questions the very assumption that keeps most people stuck. So before trying to fix your mind, before changing your thoughts, before optimizing your mindset, pause and ask yourself, who is the one aware of the mind? Because once that is seen, the struggle with the mind no longer feels the same. Which of these points felt valid to you? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd really like to know.